morning of September 6th, 1949, a 28-year-old local man in Camden, New Jersey, left his house and started walking up and down River Road in his neighborhood, and he started shooting people. He was armed with a Luger pistol that he had bought as a war souvenir. He killed 13 people that day, September 6th, 1949. At the time, the Camden Walk of Death, as they called it, that was considered the worst mass murder in our nation's history. American mass shootings are a frequent enough occurrence now that they've almost become a regular part of our news expectations. After that 1949 shooting, the next big one doesn't happen until nearly 2 decades later. In 1966, when a gunman climbed the bell tower at the University of Texas and shot 16 people to death before he was killed by police. It was nearly 2 decades after that we got the next entry on the list, when a shooter killed 21 people at a McDonald's in San Ysidro, California. That was 1984. Right after that, in 1986, our nation suffered the worst in a string of post office massacres, 14 dead plus the gunman in Edmond, Oklahoma. After that post office shooting, we get the Luby's Cafeteria massacre in Killeen, Texas, the gunman killing 23 people and then himself that day in 1991. Here we have the massacre at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, where 2 students killed 12 classmates and a teacher and then killed themselves. That brings us to 1999. We're now halfway through the list of the dozen worst mass shootings in U.S. history, and it has taken us 50 years to get there. These are terrible events with at least a dozen people killed. It takes us a half century to do half of them. The other half begins in 2007 at Virginia Tech, when a single student armed with a pair of semi-automatic weapons killed 32 people before taking his own life. In 2009, we had a pair of mass shootings. In Binghamton, New York, it was a former student at an immigration center who killed 13 people and then himself. Just 7 months later, it was an Army psychiatrist who opened fire at the Soldier Readiness Processing Center at Fort Hood in Texas, killing 13 people in what he later described as an act of war. But these things are coming faster now. In 2012, the nation again suffered not 1, but 2 of the worst massacres in our history. In July 2012, a deranged young man goes into a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado, and starts shooting using multiple guns and an ammunition magazine that held 100 bullets. He killed 12 people that night. He wounded 70 others. 5 months later, on December 14th, a single gunman walks into Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, with multiple weapons and high-capacity magazines. He kills 20 kids and 6 adults at the school, plus his mom at home before the attack, and then he kills himself. And then today, the newest entry on that awful list of worst mass killings in America, as 12 people are shot and killed, not including the alleged gunman who was found dead at the scene. 12 people today killed at the U.S. Navy Yard in D.C.
And that was Rachel Maddow. The date was September 16th. 2013, when she ran down that seemingly never-ending list of mass shootings in America. And the criteria for those was 12 or more dead, not including the shooter. You know, you should be sickened by that. I know I am. Nicole Sandler in for Randi Rhodes. And this is an epidemic, you know. But Reddit, interestingly enough, has lists by years of mass shootings. And these lists really are never-ending. I mean, and I just go down the list of 4 dead, 0 injured, 1 dead, 3 injured, 1 dead, 3 injured, 0 dead, 5 injured. It goes on. And for 2014, it's almost on a daily basis. January 1st, January 3rd, January 4th, January 5th, January 5th, another one. And it goes on, and we don't hear about these every day. Here, January 1st, 2014, Norfolk, Virginia, 2 dead, 2 injured. I'm not clicking through. 2 people killed in early morning shooting. January 3rd, 1 dead, 3 injured in Queens, New York. The headline, gunman fires at moving SUV in Queens, killing 1 and wounding 3 others. January 4th, Rock Falls, Illinois, 2 dead, 2 injured. Again, January 5th, Erie, Ohio, 1 dead, 3 injured. We don't hear about these in the news. It's almost commonplace. And today, look, I'm sitting in Randy's studio. TV's on MSNBC. We had a mass shooting this morning in a town in Georgia where gun ownership is mandatory in every household. Yeah, Kennesaw, Georgia. the town where gun ownership is mandatory. 6 people shot at a FedEx facility in Kennesaw, Georgia. And it's like, not news. Yeah, nobody's dead except the gunman. Well, there are 2 people in critical condition, but, only 2 people died. Not a big deal. No, we've seen it all. Once you've seen 20 first and second graders, or first graders, 6 and 7-year-olds killed in their classroom, and nothing's done, nothing is going to shock us anymore. And then you have the convention. All the crazies coming out yet again.
History has proven, again, the truth that President Obama and anti-freedom activists everywhere deny and try to suppress.
What?
The truth that firearms in the hands of good people save lives. You know it.
No. Actually, the day that Rachel Maddow did that segment outlining all those mass shootings of 12 or more killed throughout U.S. history, the day she did that, that was the day of the Naval Yard shooting. The guy with the gun was supposedly a good guy. In fact, this shooting today in the town where gun ownership is mandatory, I guess there weren't good people with guns around. And in fact, in Georgia, come July, you'll be able to carry a gun everywhere in Georgia. Yeah. Gee, that'll make us much safer. You feel safer? 866-87-RANDY, 866-877-2634. Would you feel safer if people were allowed to carry guns everywhere in your state? Really? Be honest with me. Would you feel safer? Let me know. Let's go to the phones. David in Jupiter, Florida, listening on WBZT. Hi.
Hi, Nicole. How are you?
Hi there.
As a Democrat, as a gun owner,
yeah,
I look at really both sides of this whole issue. And when I heard you say something about doing what was done in Australia, my ears kind of perked up.
Mm-hmm.
In this country, a country that is steeped in the culture of gun ownership, where we still argue about the constitutional right to own weapons. If you go to the heart of trying to restrict and ban certain ownership of certain weapons, you open yourself up to attack after attack.
Right, but nobody's trying to do that. I said that's what I would like to do, but I'm in the minority here. You heard the Tim Fisher interview, right? That's not what they did there. They put some common sense regulation there.
What I'm suggesting that people like yourself need to do is say, okay, here's where we have problems. A, we have problems with mentally ill people acquiring weapons.
Right.
B, we have a problem with the stowing and securing of weapons, so that 3-year-olds can't be shooting 2-year-olds.
Right.
I'm a real believer in the smart technology. For example, let's say that you buy an AK-47. It's an automatic.
Yep.
You know what? If you have that weapon, God bless you. But we're going to make you trade that weapon in for a weapon that has smart technology, which means your handprint is the only handprint that
can fire that weapon.
Work.
Well, and listen, there is a company that developed such a weapon, and this woman, listen to this from Raw Story today.
In California.
Let me read this to you. Belinda Padilla, president and CEO of the U.S. division of firearm manufacturer Armatix, says she was stalked and threatened by gun enthusiasts after she tried to bring a safer handgun to market. This company developed so-called smart guns that can only be fired by the owner. The company uses a watch that ties the owner to the weapon called the IP1. They're already selling this personalized weapon in Europe and Asia. And in an interview published by the New York Times yesterday, Padilla explained what happened when a forum of online gun enthusiasts published her cell phone number. She said it began with a, quote, few fuming mad voicemail messages and heavy breathers that got her to stop answering the phone. And then photos of her home were posted online. Quote, in a crude, cartoonish scrawl, this person drew an arrow to the blurred image of a woman passing through the photo frame. Belinda, the person wrote, is that you, according to the Times? This is disgusting, and you be cool with this. Only the registered owner of that gun can fire the gun. She's getting death threats.
And my point is this, is that as a country and as a society, we have to work towards areas that do not attack. You know, if you have to buy, if the only weapons that are available are weapons that indicate that the owner of that gun, that can legally own that gun, can fire that gun, well, then you're not impinging on their constitutional rights.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
I understand exactly what you're saying. And look,
on constitutional rights.
Nor does background checks. And in fact, the NRA used to be in favor of background checks. Look, if they had gotten universal background checks passed after Newtown, I would have been happy. But the fact is the NRA shut it all down. They made sure that not one bit of sensible gun regulation, well regulated, is right there in plain English in the Second Amendment. The rest of it may not be plain English, but well regulated, it's hard to misconstrue what that means. Right? So common sense regulations.
This is why we have to stop talking about the restriction of ownership to U.S. citizens and talk about the kinds of weapons that are available that are not going to be constitutionally restricted. In other words, who in this country would say, hey, you know, if a guy takes a tire iron, beats his wife in the head, puts her in the hospital, I think he should be able to go to a gun show the next day.
We're not talking about a tire iron, though. We're talking about gun sales to people without background checks. What Tim Fisher said was the restrictions that they put in place in Australia are common sense restrictions. There are background checks. There is mandated training where you've got to be licensed to get a gun. And it is stopped. They have not had one mass shooting since 1996, since those common sense regulations were put in effect. And all I'm saying is, give us some common sense regulations. I personally would like to see all the guns disappeared. I know that's not going to happen. How about background checks? We don't have them. They were never even voted on in either House of Congress. Where's the outrage? 866-87-RANDY, 866-877-2634. Oh, my God, you'll never believe what just came into my inbox. An email from Georgia gun owners. I'll share it with you when we return and take more of your calls, too. Nicole Sandler for Randi Rhodes. We'll be right back. We'll be back on Monday. I'm Nicole Sandler, and let's go back to the phones, 866-87-RANDY. Bruce in Maine, listening on the zone. Hi.
Hi, Nicole. I just wanted to wonder, what's the big deal about the concealed weapons things? Because I work at my town hall in my little town, and there's endless people. They need a concealed weapons permit, and it's like, that makes me feel unsafe, because unless you have a job where that's necessary, why can't you just carry your weapon on your hip? And then if we get in a car accident or something, I might think twice about getting in your face, which I shouldn't have to, but because I know you have a gun.
Right.
And why do you need a concealed weapon? You're just a citizen.
I agree. Look,
carry it.
I would rather people be required to carry openly than concealed. I'd rather know you're packing. Look, something happened to me a couple of weeks ago. You know, I live in Florida, which is not much better than Georgia, just saying. Especially, you know, for instance, if you're a black male, oh my God, get the hell out of Florida. You're not safe. So I'm driving around and I'm behind this pickup truck, and I see on the two bumper stickers on the back of this pickup truck, and I can see that each bumper sticker has a Confederate flag on it. So I speed up and get a little closer because I want to see what they say. The one on the left had the Confederate flag flying over the White House, and the tagline below it said, "I have a dream." Okay? You're laughing. I was sickened. And the other one on the right.
I'm not laughing.
Right. It's a nervous laugh, right? It's how sickening is that? And the one on the right was like just the Confederate flag in it, and the text said something like, how about protection for the new minority or something. It was so sickening, and I wanted to get a picture of it. So I'm following this truck, and he's speeding up a little faster, and finally I took some pictures, but they were kind of blurry. And then he pulled into a parking lot, and I thought, wait a minute, I'm in Florida. People have been killed for less than this. Drive away and drive away fast. And I did, right? Because I could have been killed, because those are the kind of crazy people out there. And somebody who would take Martin Luther King Jr.'s words and defame them by and just crap on them by putting it in a bumper sticker with the Confederate flag flying over the White House. How sick is that? And the fact that this moron was emboldened to put that on his bumper. Oh, my God, people are crazy, and they will shoot you.
No, and that's the thing, is that I shouldn't have to not be worried, like, say we get in a car accident, about getting out and saying, you stupid, blah, blah, blah. But you might have a gun. But
right.
If you've got one on your hip, at least I know that, and I might shut my mouth.
Right.
I mean, I shouldn't have to deal with that in America.
No, you shouldn't have to. And look, if we knew that crazy people with mental issues aren't getting them, at least, you know what, we might be able to save 1 or 2 lives a year. And when we're talking about saving someone's life, it's a hell of a lot more important than someone's imagined right to keep a stockpile of weapons in their home.
No, absolutely. I just think I don't see why we're giving away concealed weapons permits like candy.
I don't either.
Because back when I was younger, a friend of mine needed one, but he worked for a money carrier. There was a reason why he needed a concealed weapon. I mean, he transported money.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else, if they wanted a permit, they got a regular permit.
Right.
They didn't get a concealed weapons permit. Now it's just a non-stop line of people coming in for concealed weapons permit.
Yeah.
Why do I need a concealed weapon?
Right. I don't know. I can
have a weapon in my house if I want to. I don't choose to, but I mean, I can.
Mm-hmm.
I can take it with me if I want to, but I don't have one. But why do I need a concealed weapon? That's the thing.
That's an interesting take.
The stupid fights that would start in school and stuff. And, you would always judge, well, can this guy beat me up? But I can beat you up if I have a gun.
Yeah, I hear you. Bruce, thank you for the call. All right, we're going to take a break, come back on the other side with our friend Cliff Schechter. Cliff and I have had many, many discussions about the gun problem in this country. He was at the NRA convention this weekend. He wrote a frightening piece that's posted at thedailybeast.com. It's in the homework section at randyrhodes.com. It's called Preparing for War in Indianapolis, Inside the NRA Plot to Terrify America. And that's what they want to do. They want to scare you. And they want guns. And they want to tell you that we're coming to take away their guns. And now they're warning you, if Hillary Clinton is elected, she'll take away your guns. Well, what about Obama? I thought he was going to take away your guns. Nicole for Randy. We'll be right back.
Turn down the noise. Turn up your mind. With Randi Rhodes on Premier Radio Networks.
Aren't they something, though? Aren't they something? Blaming that chunk of steel, the weapon itself for the crime committed. They even blame sporting goods stores that sell arms, accusing them of being an accomplice.
Oh, she's like fingernails on a blackboard.
Stores are an accomplice to crime, and that fork made me fat.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? I'm going to skip to the chase, and she ended this little segment of that speech with this.
Waterboarding is how we baptize terrorists.
God, everything about that woman is just wrong. But she got a plum speaking spot at the NRA convention that was held in, I think it was Indianapolis, last weekend. Yeah. Nicole Sandler in for Randi Rhodes, and joining me now is our friend, Cliff Schechter. He's a pundit. He's a columnist. He's a PR maven. And he's got a piece up at thedailybeast.com right now on his visit to the NRA convention in Indianapolis on Sunday. Hey, Cliff, nice to see that you survived that.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks for having me on.
Always.
Yeah, they act like tough guys, but they actually don't allow people to carry weapons in there.
Right.
So they are, you know, it matches their whole persona, because since I wrote that piece you're referring to about the insanity of the warfare weaponry they had 9 acres of, that they were selling to people there. I've enjoyed it. I've been attacked by Dana Loesch and Katie Pavlik and, all the useful idiots on the right. And I think they think that the kinds of things they say that hurt each other's feelings work on smart people too. Like they're all like, "Oh, did you get your panties in a bunch?" And did you feel like a girl when you were there? Are you scared of guns? Not realizing that those of us who are secure in who we are, the stuff that you would say in recess when you're 8 or 9 years old doesn't really hurt. And it's such projection, because the truth of the matter is that these are people that literally are scared to come out from under their bed without a gun of some sort. They're scared of modernity. They're scared of people that look different than them. They're scared of anything more complicated than a Sarah Palin sentence. And that's why they need all these guns.
And can I just ask you something? Because one point you made has just stayed with me while I've been talking, and that is the NRA convention is a gun-free zone. Now, if they're so confident that every moron walking down the street should have a gun, then why did they make their convention into a gun-free zone?
Well, my guess is that I don't know the rules of the auditorium there. I guess they would use that as an excuse. But there are plenty of places now, for example, in Georgia and other places where they've made these auditoriums where you can have guns that they could go and openly carry. Because the truth is, behind the scenes, there's a couple people at the top who are getting rich off of all the stupid people who believe the garbage they feed them, that American society is falling apart. I mean, that one section I quoted in my piece from Wayne LaPierre, that should just be satire. I mean, I don't even know where to go with that, where he's saying, you need to be ready for the rapers and the haters and the knockout gamers and the power grid's failing because of terrorists. I mean, he paints this picture like we're living in, we're all Snake Plissken living in Escape from New York,
right.
Saw that movie, or something of that sort, the Blade Runner. When the truth of the matter, as I noted in the piece, is that crime rates have steadily been falling for the last 20 years. We have, by far, as you pointed out in your terrific interview, or you discussed in your terrific interview with the former Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, that we, compared to other OECD countries, have a much higher firearm homicide rate. It is sickening and it's criminal. Yep. At the same time, even with that, crime rates have been falling here and around most of the high-income world. That's been the trends that have been going on for a variety of reasons. So they paint this picture of this frightening world that you're supposed to be so scared of, but it's not true. And
right.
These guys, because I've been attacked by probably a few hundred of them on Twitter today, they're hysterical. I mean, they cannot literally get up out of their bed in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom without taking a gun with them. They're so frightened of the world.
Yeah, and we saw how that worked out for the Blade Runner guy, Oscar Pistorius, that guy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That's the danger of taking the gun with you to the bathroom in the middle of the night. You're going to shoot somebody who shouldn't be shot, and
which
that's
happens in this country every day.
Right,
and
every day. Every day.
You talked about in that great interview you had, how since the Port Arthur massacre, when they reformed gun laws in just every common sense way you can imagine in Australia, they haven't had another gun massacre. But it's not even just that. It's the stuff you're talking about now with the easy availability of guns. The byproduct of that has been just day-to-day shootings have gone way down. Suicide has gone down like 70%.
Right.
Because using a firearm to kill, often people who would not otherwise try to kill themselves again make a split-second decision and do something terrible because they're depressed. And a gun will help them be successful at that most of the time, whereas virtually any other way they try to do it, most of the time they will be saved. It's something like 80 or 90% effective with a gun and something like 10 or 20% effective with anything else.
Right.
So, so that's what Australia has seen. It's not even just the mass shootings. It's just the quality of life in general, all around.
And Cliff, it's not only Australia. This has happened in other countries, too, where they have some unimaginable tragedy like we had in Newtown, like the Port Arthur massacre in Australia that led to them changing their gun laws. In Scotland, also in 1996, here you go, a lone gunman walked into a primary school in Dublin, Scotland, and shot dead 16 children and their teacher before killing himself. Guess what? They tightened their gun regulations, and it's had a major impact. In Finland, same thing happened after in 2007. A teenager killed 8 people before killing himself at a high school, and they changed the laws. Just common sense.
Right.
Gun regulations.
That's why all these claims are nothing but smoke and mirrors.
Right,
we have a history, a frontier history.
So does Australia. So does Australia.
We have a history of weapons. Finland, you just named a perfect one, also had a history of firearm, of a high rate of ownership of firearms. All these other countries found a way when terrible things happened to say, you know what? Every statistic that's not taken from some hack bought off by groups like the NRA tells you the same thing.
Exactly.
What you would know just from common sense. Where there are more weapons, there are more killings. Where there are more weapons, there's more suicides. Where there are more weapons, there are more accidental deaths. This is just, it's common sense, but, you can go anywhere from the University of Pennsylvania School of Epidemiology, the Harvard Public School of Public Health, Johns Hopkins, the same thing, School of Public Health. I mean, they've created, you can go on and on. These studies, they all show the same thing. I mean, where there's more guns, there's more of this violence.
Right.
And the NRA's created this bubble where they tell people just the opposite is true. They've got paid off hacks who dress themselves up as they're intellectuals of some sort of professors. You've got the Dana Loesch's of the world who fill their role. The Sarah Palins who were playing before just get up and as you point out, in their own vicious way, disregard the safety and lives of anybody they're talking to just for a buck.
Yep.
I don't know what that makes them. Probably a word I can't say on the show here.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's insanity. Again,
it is. So Cliff Schechter. So let me. Look. Again, I got this idea about a travel advisory against the U.S. from that very man that I interviewed in the first hour. And by the way, if you missed it, an interview with Tim Fisher, former Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, it is posted in the homework section at randyrhodes.com. It's also up on my blog at radioornot.com. I've tweeted it out. It's in its own self-contained embeddable form. He, after Christopher Lane, an Australian student and baseball player, was killed in Oklahoma, he said on an interview here in the U.S. that he would warn anybody in Australia to think twice before coming here. And ding, ding, ding went off in my head. And I kept thinking, our elected officials, if the tragedy of Newtown, if the 20 babies gunned down in their classroom wasn't enough to move them, nothing is going to be. There's nothing horrific enough that's going to get these people to do something. Yeah. The only thing that motivates them, it seems, is money. So if we cost this country some money, maybe then they'll do something. And the only way I can think to do that is have some of these other countries who've had their citizens killed here issue travel advisories.
Right. Well, you have that great, you have a blog up and you've got that great chart from the Washington Post. And I frankly think, it would be useful to us, as you're pointing out, to warn people who are coming to the United States in general, but even more so warn people going to Georgia, and certain other states, and stand your ground states.
And Florida, right?
One, and I sadly live in one, or one that's about to be headed in that direction, I think.
You're in Ohio, yep.
People should know. They should be warned. I mean, a lot of, I lived abroad twice in England and France where nothing, of course, like this happened. And in England, so, it was very popular, you probably know, for a lot of the Brits to go to Florida to get sun. And maybe they should save that for the Greek Isles or or the French Riviera.
Or go to Disney Paris instead.
Why would you come? I think that at this point, officials in their country are not being responsible for not saying to them, if you're leaving the United Kingdom to come here and you've got something like a 17 times higher chance of being killed by a gun here than you do there. The same way you wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't tell them what's going on if you were to go visit Iran or Somalia.
Right.
They should know. People, there should be travel advice.
There should be. And look, I think everyone's afraid of, you don't want to insult the U.S. Well, it's dangerous here. Cliff, yesterday and today, I guess, I haven't seen the news for today, but yesterday, horrible tornadoes, Arkansas and Missouri and Alabama, and this morning, or when I got in here, the death toll from the tornadoes yesterday was up to 31. And we're all, saddened, and, our thoughts and our prayers go out to these people. How many gun deaths happen, killing by gun happen in this country every day?
Actually, just about that.
Just about that. Every day. We're freaking out because 31 people were killed yesterday in tornadoes, and yet every single day this happens in this country.
Massacres, but we don't notice when this is going on all the time.
Yeah.
And again, you're talking about at this point, at the end of any given year in this country, you're talking about somewhere around 11 or 12,000 people murdered. You're talking about another 18 or so 20,000 people who either accidentally are killed or commit suicide with guns. So you're talking about 30,000 plus gun deaths. And then if you take it up to those who are injured, 100,000 you're getting towards.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's manageable. People should come together, and boycott businesses that allow, guns to be carried. That happened recently.
With Starbucks, right?
If there's a business where they're allowing people to carry guns openly, or they're allowing people to carry concealed weapons, don't go there.
Yep.
People need to get together. You talk about purchasing power. We need to use our purchasing power here too. There used to be something called the Blue Pages. I remember that came out. I think it still exists. So you'd know which companies, like right-wingers, like the Koch brothers, and people less famous for them, donate to Republicans. Well, maybe there needs to be a book about which companies, what their gun policies are, so people should know. Because everybody who's listening, and I've got 2 kids, and if you have kids, and I know you have a kid too, Nicole. I mean, would you not want to know that there's 2 coffee places next door, and one of them has somebody sitting there, with an AR-15 out in the open, and the other one doesn't allow it? Where would you rather be?
Well, that's the thing. Look, I remember, I've been here for Randy too many times after these mass shootings. I came in the day after the Aurora movie theater shooting, and I almost started crying when I was, telling the story of talking to my kid about that, and how I had to tell her that if you're ever in a situation like that, get down on the floor and play dead. And how I had to say this to my then 13-year-old daughter? Oh, my God.
That we're having that conversation. For me, when the Newtown thing happened, I had a son in a school class that was a kindergarten class that was about the same size as the one. That could have been anybody that day. And the more people realize it and realize that this isn't, it's coming to you. Because these weapons are being sold. They're being sold. Places like Georgia are loosening their gun laws.
I know. The Guns Everywhere bill, that the law goes into effect in July. I'll tell you, and look, it's interesting. Tim Fisher, in that interview, specifically singled out Georgia and Montana. And sure enough, there was a shooting in Montana today as well. Oh, it's just one guy killed. So, and Georgia today. Right, 6 people.
Kennesaw, Georgia, where they require everybody to own a gun.
I know. It is insane. We live in opposite world. We need to fix this. And as I said before, look, I'm glad the whole country is outraged that a known racist is racist. Good. I'm glad you're outraged. How about getting outraged enough to save some lives?
I agree. That's what we need to do.
We do. Cliff Schechter, thank you so much. I hope everyone reads your piece on the NRA convention. I can't imagine what you were feeling like walking through that exhibit hall. Just reading the description made my blood curdle. I'll talk to you later, Cliff. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. We got to take one more break, and then we'll be back to wrap this baby up. One more break to Bruce. I'm going to see Bruce Springsteen tonight in Fort Lauderdale for about my 28th time or something. But, hey, every time is worth it. Every time is great. All right, we'll be right back. Well, yeah, actually, it is Nicole Sandler of RadioOrNot.com this week in for Randi Rhodes, and I got to tell, I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. You know, like Randy and I have a lot in common. We both have a background in music radio, and I did music radio for many, many years. The majority of my career was in music radio, and you know, aside from that, I'm a huge Springsteen fan, and I've seen him at least a couple dozen times, at least. And I mentioned on my show last Thursday that I was kind of bummed because Springsteen is in town in Fort Lauderdale tonight. And I said, this will be the first time that Bruce is playing in the city where I am, and I'm not going. And I just can't justify the money. You know, times are tough. And with Randy's show going away, there goes the bulk of my income just from the guest hosting I do for her. And so I couldn't justify spending the money. And so I had sort of resigned myself to the fact that I wasn't going. And a generous listener, I got a notification from PayPal and a note from him, and he said, I went to the Ticketmaster website, and I saw there are floor seats available, and I was going to buy you a ticket, but Bruce has elected for the paperless ticket policy to thwart scalpers, and so he sent me a donation to pay for tickets. So I got to go. So I'll make that sacrifice. I can't thank him enough because we need music. We need entertainment. You know, it's important, as Sean was telling us earlier, to do our research, to do our homework, to be as informed as possible so that when you go into that voting booth, you are an informed voter, so that when you talk to other people, you can set them straight because they're being fed lies by, unfortunately, the majority of the media, you know, and so you need to have that knowledge. But, boy, I hope you also have an escape. You also need something that calms your soul, that gives you joy and pleasure. And for me, I love music. But a Springsteen concert, there's nothing like it. The first time I saw Springsteen in concert, it was 1978. I was in college. I went to University of South Florida in Tampa. And my boyfriend at the time was a huge Springsteen fan. And I didn't get it. I'd listen to the records and go, okay. I saw him live at the Lakeland Civic Center. And I was blown away. And I walked out of there, and, you know, I'm an atheist. And I walked out of there and I said, that's the closest I've ever come to having a religious experience. So I'm going to go see Bruce tonight. I will be back here tomorrow, probably in a really good mood, because there's nothing like a Springsteen concert. So thank you, listener John. I can't thank you enough. Yeah. So I'll see you tomorrow. We'll talk with John Nichols of The Nation. He's going to have a tribute up at The Nation to Tim Carpenter, who was the man who headed Progressive Democrats of America, who died yesterday of cancer. We'll talk to John about Tim Carpenter's contributions and also the state of the progressive movement and a whole bunch more. So thank you for listening. See you tomorrow. Thank you, Randy.